This one is interesting because, so again, all of these decisions were ownership prompted, right? They were all like, we're done with you, not you being done with us. The Pete Carroll one is interesting because instead of just firing him, they're shuffling him upstairs. It's like, hey, Pete, we're going to need to get rid of you, but obviously that doesn't look great. So how would you feel with like an emeritus position with inside the building? You know, you could go up, get you a nice corner office. You don't have much to do these days. You know, well, it'll be nice, you know, and who cares if you don't really have any power anymore? You just, you know, it's all a culture thing, you know?
I mean, it's interesting. Like you've seen it, Saban apparently is going to have an office upstairs. So good luck to that new coach. You got like
how bad must that be?
Yeah, I know. Mike Krzyzewski does it at Duke. Bless up to was it John Shire there? I saw John Shire play in high school. Guy went off. Side note. Anyway, like it is interesting. I think with mutual parting of the ways. Look, Pete still has the energy of a 25-year-old. I think he has more energy than me, and I'm in my 20s still. But the defense has been bad for a couple years now in Seattle. Like that is the reality of the situation. It has not. His side of the ball has not been good. It's funny, like I guess like the anti-Belichick. Like I think the personnel, they've had some good draft classes recently, and the overall team, the transition from Russ to Geno went about as well as it possibly could have. So everything else I think's been pretty good, although his game management has been spotty in terms of decision making. But in the defense, his actual unit has not been good. So yeah, it's a fascinating one. I hope he sticks around and stays involved and gives some press conferences because he is a joy. But I think it makes sense. And obviously, we had all three insiders mention Dan Quinn's name in a half a second. Maybe he comes aboard, maybe even retains a Shane Waldron, potentially things of that nature could manifest pretty quickly. But this is the most out-of-pocket tweet of all time from Bomani Jones when he said that Pete Carroll was the Farrah Fawcett of the day. For people who don't know the reference, you can go Google that. But anyway, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, Pete Carroll is also a legend. Whenever you win at both levels, I give you a little bit added feather in your cap because college football and the NFL are two totally different environments.
And not just win, but like he did build like a legitimate sort of peak contender at both levels and won everything at both levels, like Super Bowl and, getting USC to as good as they were. Like those two things, he didn't just succeed at both levels. Like he literally got to the summit of the mountain at both levels and did it, in a way like he was not, because of the way he had quote unquote failed at the NFL before he went to USC. Expectations were not that high when he came back to the NFL, and it's like, that's an interesting move. And then he turned Seattle into this incredible team, revolutionizes defense. I mean, anytime you literally create the template, like people were replicating that Seahawks defense for the better part of a decade. And it's only just sort of started to go away from that now in the last couple of years. That's a hell of a legacy to bring to the table. And in addition to the sort of personnel side of it. So, yeah, like Pete Carroll, I think, has been an incredible legacy. I mean, the win rate speaks for itself. The resume speaks for itself. The length of time he was doing it for, I think, speaks for itself. Is it kind of weird, though, that like now? Why now? Why is this happening now?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think it kind of just provides a clean exit. They missed the playoffs. Maybe if they make it, there's a different situation here, especially if they, maybe have an upset win in the wild card round. But it seems like a period of transition for this team. Like they also probably are, I think Geno's still the guy for the short term, but do they maybe draft a guy and kind of start working into that transition? Does John Schneider want to have more power and run the personnel? And again, like it's kind of the power dynamic is that we keep coming back to because Pete was also, I think he had final say over 53. I suppose I could be wrong on that, but that is my understanding of the situation there. Not that Schneider also didn't have a ton of power and is good at what he does. But yeah, I just think it's kind of this new age of the NFL where it'd rather be a year early than a year late. Maybe that was their thinking too. Let him ride off in the sunset. He won the Russell Wilson, debacle, and not to pour on. Russell Wilson flew to Seattle to party with him last night, so I thought that was very cool. But don't let him have the Belichick season go, get the third overall pick and have it kind of be ugly. He's 72, but I'm sure he would have been down to keep coaching. But like I said, that's why I think it's like hey Pete, like the messaging can be mutual, but you're getting fired.
But it didn't that's the strange thing about it is like this doesn't look like a team that's on its way to falling apart. You know, the Belichick Patriots one, I mean, this has been heading in this direction since Brady left, right? It's been a sort of steady, slow decline, slope down. Eventually, it's like, all right, now it's too much. We've got to go. It's not coming back around. It's time to go in a different direction. The Seahawks had a winning record this year. They were, again, right on the cusp of the playoffs. They theoretically have found the next quarterback in Geno Smith. Like, they're not in this, oh, no, what do? We've no quarterback. We're destined to collapse. Like, if there was a time for him to part ways, it was when they got rid of Russ and they were going to sort of rebuild the thing. They kind of rebuilt it with Geno Smith there. The rest of the roster isn't in bad shape. They're winning games. I mean, why, it feels a little bit rash to be like, your time is done, old man. See ya.
Yeah, I just come back to, the end of the day, his side of the ball, he's coordinating. I mean, their defense, second half of the year, you go out, you trade a second and a fifth round pick for an expiring contract on a 29-year-old player who was actually great as a Seahawk. So it's not, I guess, fair. But and the defense is still, and they played a lot of good teams for the second half of the season. But I mean, they were terrible. I mean, Mason Rudolph was lighting them up. So, not that he's he did bring in Clint Hurt and Sean Desai. Like they've done different things. They're not just playing. Gus Bradley is still just kind of spamming cover three. Like they're not. They've been trying new things. But that's the only thing I can come back. I agree with you. The only thing I can come back to is he is a defensive coach, and their defense failed them this year.
Is it, do you think, a reflection on where the division is right now? Like Kyle Shanahan effectively has got Pete Carroll shit canned because that's the standard now. 9-8 is no good. 9-8 would be great if we were in the NFC South, but we're not. We're in a division with the 49ers who look like an unstoppable juggernaut right now. And if you can't show me how we're getting to there, you're not the guy. I need that. That's the standard now.
That is interesting. It's very interesting because he actually, I think, has a great record against McVay. Shanahan does kill him, or maybe I have those flipped. I actually think I said it on the podcast, and someone commented that I had it wrong. So I think I have it wrong again. But he's good against one of them. He gets killed by the other. Here's my only thing I find that interesting. If Dan Quinn is their target, Dan Quinn also kind of has a not the most adaptable defense, and the Niners have destroyed the Dallas Cowboys. I know the score in the first two games isn't as bad, but the underlying metrics are not good. I was going to tweet it out, but I felt like it was a little bit unfair. But if you took these Niners production over the three games where it was the Niners versus Dallas defense, which we would agree is one of the most talented defenses in the NFL, they're 32nd or 30th or 31st in every metric if you map that to a full season. Again, that is not fair. That's not an appropriate way to do an analysis against the best offense in the league. But yeah, no, it's a good point. Maybe it's also when you go back to rather be a year early than a year late, maybe they're sitting there thinking the quicker we can find our McVay or our Shanahan, because these guys are going to be here for probably a while, the better, because it's not working right now. And we got to figure something out because, look, I think Gannon and what they're building in Arizona is pretty enticing too. Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but I like what they've done. Yeah, the NFC West is an absolute arms race right now.
I am fascinated by this, previous legend being moved upstairs and just looming over you from his office. Okay, Pete Carroll has that kind of nice guy thing that it might work anyway, but dude, can you imagine being the Alabama head coach and Nick Saban just glaring down at you from his glass office up there, judging your failure relative to his success? The Vikings did this with Bud Grant. They gave him an office in the new facility, but the last time he coached the team was 1985 or something. He would, he's long since just passed into being sort of nice old team legend that hangs around the place. It's not the dude that built the dynasty is now taking a step back and you get a shot at it. And if you don't measure up to him, he's going to look at you and think, you worthless piece of crap.
Yeah, gorgeous office, by the way, in Minnesota. The Bruce Arians is the most recent example, and he's different. I was going to bring that up, but it's a little bit different because not he established some 15-year dynasty in Tampa Bay. He came over as a mercenary, had an awesome 3-year stretch, but he is in that role though. He helps some personnel. Yeah. Obviously, he kind of had the Todd Bowles succession plan. I don't think it was contractually. Right. I think he kind of gamed the system a little bit. But yeah, so No, you're right though.
But that,
It creates an interesting dynamic
but
because
that's where it's different.
Pete
with,
Carroll, it's gonna be those guys. They're not capable of not saying
Yeah.
something or like what, like it's not in their DNA. It's why they're great, but it probably will. Like I think the Krzyzewski one. I know it's a football podcast, but I think that one's hilarious. Like,
But that's where the Arians one. You're right. It's different in a couple of ways. Number one, I mean, he didn't have this like decades-long tenure as the legend of that franchise. And number two, he kind of picked his successor. So it's like, I'm here as I'm here as your mentor. I'm still in the building. I'm good. You need anything, just give me a call. I'm upstairs. That is a lot different to like, just a guy sitting there in judgment over his successor. Just feels so much weirder.